Yeshua is the living word, and the joy and rejoicing of my heart. Yeshua is the living word.
Shalom, I'm Neil and this is my wife Jamie.
Shalom.
Welcome to our Home Away from Home in Toronto, Canada. As you've already seen, our program today is about a Jewish jewel called the Shofar, and we have several of them right here on our coffee table.
In fact, a couple of these, Neil, come from the Shofar factory in Israel, where we bought them and when we went on our last trip. By the way, we go every year, so come with us sometime. You'll enjoy it. And stay tuned. You're going to enjoy today's program about Shofar. What is a Shofar? It's an animal's horn that's been prepared for use as a musical instrument.
Right.
And you can use the horn of a ram, wild goat, kudu, gazelle, antelope, but never the horn
of a cow.
Of a cow or a steer.
Right, because we don't want to remind God about the episode in the wilderness with the golden calf.
Good
right,
idea.
Exodus chapter 32. And really the preferred horn is either a ram or a wild goat because they're curved. And the curve is a reminder of man's will bending before God's will and man's heart bowing before his ruler.
While in Jerusalem, we went to the biblical zoo, of course, where we saw a shofar in its natural state on a ram. We had a great time that day feeding the sheep and the goats. And now back to the shofar, Neil.
Well, the shofar is actually probably the oldest musical instrument that's still in use today. In fact, it's mentioned almost 70 times in the Bible.
You had an exciting adventure at that shofar factory. Now, I have to tell you, I didn't go in. I couldn't stand the smell. But Neil and the cameramen were brave. They went in. And why don't we go to the shofar factory? And let's see that now.
Piles of animal horns greeted us as we entered the small factory on a narrow street in Tel Aviv. These large ones are from the kudu, an African antelope, and are shipped to Israel from Morocco. Avram, the Orthodox Jewish owner, told us the secret ingredients were heat and pressure. The heat softened the horn, then pressure was applied to straighten the end to make a more attractive and useful shofar. The spiritual implication was obvious. How often I've experienced heat and pressure as the Lord worked in my life. It also reminded me of our cooking segments. We always seem to have a secret ingredient. The next step for this shofar was the grinding wheel. The skilled hands pressed the horn against the grinding belt, turning it from side to side. As he worked, the rough exterior was removed and the beautiful texture and coloration of the horn was exposed for us to see. A drill was used to open a path for air to flow through the horn. Although the machinery seemed old and somewhat primitive, Avram's experience and loving attention were directed at producing shofars that would not only look good, but sound good too. And now the last step, polishing. Here's where the shofar becomes a beautiful art object. It seemed as if there was a secret ingredient here too, the skill in Avram's hands. The green substance is a polishing compound. It helps to smooth out the roughness left by the grinding process and brings a high, glossy shine to the finished shofar.
Neil, is it true that Avram is making most of the shofars that are sold in Israel today?
It seemed like it, James. Every time we went in a shop in Israel, it was there. And every place we've gone in the United States with a gift shop and they had shofars, they were his.
He's a busy man.
He must be very busy.
You know, I'm sure our friends would be really interested in the spiritual parallels you see between the process of making a shofar and the process of believers learning true submission to the Lord.
Well,
tell us about that.
James, it really seems as if the four-step process is really appropriate for us as well. First of all, there's the heat and the pressure.
Ooh, I know about that.
And both of those are really the situations, the people, the places in our lives that apply that kind of pressure to us that helps us to take on a more pleasing shape in God. And then, of course, there's the grinding, where you grind off the rough edges so that the inner beauty can show. And, of course, the inner beauty is the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh in us. Then there's that drilling process when an air passage is made. And really, for us as believers, the purpose of that is to allow God's breath, the Ruach, the breath of God, to flow through us, to manifest. And then the final step, of course, is the polishing, so that the light, the shininess comes forth, so that we can let our light so shine amongst men that it brings glory to our Father in heaven.
He is the bread sent down from heaven, the blood